G'day guys, and welcome to this business management lesson. In today's lesson, we're looking at key knowledge point 334. That is unit 3, area of study 3, and the fourth key knowledge point for this area of study. Today specifically, we're looking at strategies to improve both the efficiency and the effectiveness of operations related to materials management. And hopefully, this key knowledge point gives us a list of the different materials management strategies that you need to be familiar with for this key knowledge point. To begin, we'll just reiterate once again that the key elements of an operation system are the inputs, the processes, and the outputs. This key knowledge point is specifically talking about the ways to manage the resources you require, that is your inputs, and to a lesser extent, your outputs. This has very little to do with your processes. This is more about making sure that you have and can manage an adequate number of inputs to meet the required number of outputs. I'll also remind you that this key knowledge point specifically names that these strategies are designed to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of operations. Efficiency is the best use of resources. An operation system that can produce the required number of outputs with the bare minimum number of inputs is said to be the most efficient. And effectiveness is the degree to which a business or an operation system can meet its stated objectives. Now, when it comes to materials management, we're talking about making sure that your inputs, your resources are in the right place, at the right time, in the right quantities, and with the desired quality. This is what materials management is all about. If you don't have enough resources, you failed in your materials management. If you have enough resources, but they're only getting delivered next week, and you needed to enter production this week, you've failed at materials management. Materials management is about making sure that your business has what it needs to do its operations. When it comes to determining whether or not you have enough, it might not necessarily be that you didn't order enough. It might be that your storage processes or the handling processes have failed to meet that need. It's quite possible that even if you have warehouses of stock, accidents can happen, and you might lose valuable stock due to defects. It might be that the stock is damaged. Certainly, things can expire. Things with expiry dates or perishable goods can expire and create waste that way. Certainly, it's quite possible that you'll be wasting money and resources storing inputs if you have too many. And certainly, if you've invested quite a lot into purchasing resources that are sitting around not getting used, you're wasting money that way. You could have tied up a lot of your business's funds in resources that you're not yet ready to use. So, knowing that just buying as much as you can and keeping it in a warehouse is prone to risks and is quite a wasteful strategy in and of itself, what are some other strategies we could use to manage our inputs? Well, that's what this key knowledge point is all about. Forecasting is just as it sounds. You might be familiar with the terminology or the term forecasting from weather forecasting. It's basically the same concept for materials management. You might look at your past sales data from previous seasons, previous months, previous weeks, previous calendar years to determine if there are patterns that you can begin to use to predict future behavior. For example, if you're a toy company that manufactures toys, you can be pretty well reassured that you're probably going to sell more stock in mid to late November and the first 2-3 quarters of December in the lead up to the Christmas holiday period, which is typically a time when markets see significantly increased buying in areas, in industries that are typically associated with gift giving, and children's toys is one of those areas. Certainly, too, if you are a confectioner who makes chocolate and you perhaps sell egg-shaped chocolates, you can expect that you're going to sell more stock in the March-April window around the time of Easter. If you sell jumpers and umbrellas, you'd expect to sell more of those in Australia in the lead up to and during the winter months. If you sell thongs and wide-brimmed hats and sunscreen, you'd expect to sell more of that in the lead up to the summer months. This is not a difficult concept, and it's one that many businesses use whether or not they know to put a name to it. It is forecasting. And if you know you're going to sell more of a certain type of product at a period of time, then you can make purchasing decisions around your required inputs in advance to that period to ensure that you have all of the inputs necessary to make sure you can meet the demand for your outputs at that time. So going back to our example of a toy company that manufactures toys, if you know that you're going to sell more toys in the lead up to Christmas, then you might be thinking in August or September that you need to buy more plastics or more wood, more mechanical parts, whatever it is that you use to manufacture your toys, so you can increase your production to meet the demand at that time of year. Now, master production scheduling is also a materials management strategy. It is being very thorough in your planning, essentially. The master production schedule is an itemized itinerary of all of your output requirements. What will be produced, when it will be produced, where it will be produced, how it will be produced, and how much will be produced. If you have the answers to all of those questions, then you can start to make sure that you have in place everything that you need to get it done. Assuming you've done master production scheduling and you know what, when, where, and how it'll be produced and how much will be produced, then you could develop a materials requirement plan. If the master production schedule is about your outputs, your materials requirement plan would be a list of all of the materials that you need to meet the needs of your master production schedule. So if your master production schedule has said that in the third week of June 2023, you'll be manufacturing 100,000 units of autonomous vacuums, those Roomba type devices, then you're going to know that you need to have tiny wheels and plastic cases and microchips and antennas and whatever else goes into those little guys in the lead up to that period. Part of your materials requirement planning would be ensuring that you have the quantities of inputs required to meet your master production schedule. Certainly, it would also account for things like the stock that you already have on hand, so you know how much you need to buy of certain input types. Supplier lead times, so if you have a supplier who's very reliable and can provide you with the inputs you need in a certain in a quality that you're happy with, but when you place an order with them, it takes 6 weeks to get what you've ordered, then you'll know that you need to order those 6 weeks before production. And certainly, you can be thinking about the quality of the materials required to meet your order. Some product lines from some companies require a significantly different quality of input than other product lines, and this can be accounted for in materials requirement planning. And now, just in time, or JIT. This materials management strategy is quite revolutionary. It is almost the polar opposite of that warehousing, the bulk storage of inputs that we alluded to at the start of this lesson. In a just-in-time operation system, the inputs that you require will arrive only as they're needed, but no earlier or later. They'll arrive exactly when they're needed, in the right quantity, in the right quality. This has some significant advantages. You don't have to pay for storage at all. And storage can be a huge cost in operations. If you're not paying for storage, that's a huge cost savings. And you don't need to store it because there's never going to be a large volume of stock on hand. There's going to be just what you need at one time. However, it is risky in the sense that if your materials don't arrive in time, you can't proceed with production. So you need to have pretty robust processes in place to trust your operation system to a just-in-time materials management strategy. If you want to know more about just-in-time, I suggest you look up Toyota. They're kind of the people who invented it, and certainly that's what my classes will be looking at this week. In summary for this key knowledge point, it's important that a business can supply enough outputs to satisfy the demand in the market. If your business can't supply enough output, you're missing out on potential sales, and if you oversupply the demand, you're probably going to have a hard time selling the outputs that you've invested time and money into. The worst result for an operation system is that it fails to meet demand in either one of those two cases, undersupply or oversupply, are equally disappointing. One strategy for ensuring that your supply will always meet your demand is to warehouse large volumes of inventory. However, that's expensive and it carries risks. So some more efficient and effective methods of materials management that we've talked about in this lesson are forecasting, master production scheduling, materials requirement planning, and just-in-time materials management. That's all for today. See you next time.